just freshly trimmed, you know. I won't tell you how many hours it takes to get this hair looking like it does.
Oh, I bet.
Well, hey, we've been hyping you up, and I know we've got some guests here off to the side join on the call, so I appreciate all these classes. And just to bring you up to speed, I think we're up to 25 classes from around the world that are going to partake in our festivities this year, Stephen, which is really exciting from where we were last year. And so
that's incredible.
Official kickoff of our project, in which you played an instrumental role in last year. And so I'm just going to let you work your magic and do what you do, because they are pretty geeked to hear from you and all that good stuff. So we can't thank you enough for making this happen with all you've got going on. And I'll let you go.
Cool beans. So I assume that we've already talked about survival in the past. We talked about survival in the present. Yes.
Yes, we met with Callie Moore from PBS looking at 5 mass extinctions, and they're just kind of beginning to look at present day.
Okay.
But we are getting their minds thinking about Artemis and life beyond, which is the future, but for many of them will be their present.
That's what I was going to say, that Artemis really isn't as future as you think it is. We are launching, we've reset our launch date for mid-November. We've had some things happen, and I think this is an important lesson, and one that the students who worked on this last year really got a good hold on, is the importance of understanding the importance of failure and what that means. So even here at NASA, we built a brand new vehicle called the Space Launch System. And in order to make that work, we had to build the ground support equipment to support that. We had to build fueling systems to support that. We had to redo the vehicle assembly building to support that. And when you put all these new things together, things are going to go wrong. Now, notice I didn't say might go wrong, could go wrong. I used the direct going to. We fully expect that to happen as we go in. Anytime you are going to do something that's new, anytime you do something that's hard, anytime you do something that's going to matter, you're gonna fail at it at first. And not only is that okay, that's important, because that's where the learning happens. That's where you figure out the new things, the things that are gonna move the needle forward. So if you're doing things that you're just great at the first time you do them all the time, who cares? Because those are easy things and anyone could do those, and big whoop. Or at least that's what we used to say a million years ago when I was in school. I don't know if that's still a thing.
Hashtag big whoop.
Okay. So we tried to launch the first time, and the engine number 3 didn't cool the way it was supposed to. So we had to put it off. And then the second time we tried to launch, the actual fueling valve had a leak on it, and we were leaking hydrogen, which Aaron can tell you, as we get a little older, sometimes you just leak hydrogen. It happens. We had a little issue with that. We figured that out and got it fixed. And then we tried to launch, and there was a hurricane that came along. So we had to go back into the building, kind of duck and cover. And it turns out that NASA is doing a lot of stuff. So Artemis isn't the only thing that we're doing. So we ran up against the launch of Crew 5, which is heading up to the space station. So we had to push it off a little bit more. And I know that seems frustrating to a lot of people who are watching and wanting this thing to go. And it's frustrating for us too, but it's not a surprise for us, because we're doing things that no one's ever done before. This vehicle is the biggest, strongest, fastest thing human beings have ever launched, ever. And so anytime, again, you're doing something that matters, you're doing something that's going to move the needle, that's creative, you're going to have failures, and that's okay. So for your perspective, the survivability part of this, we are going to the moon to learn how to survive long-term on a body that is not Earth. So the point of Artemis in the short term is to land the first woman and first person of color on the surface of the moon. That's going to happen by 2025-ish. We are going to then go back about every year. We're going to build infrastructure, which is a big word that really just means all the things that you need around you in order to live. It's your transportation, your water, the food, the public health things that you have, all of that stuff. And we're going to build that on and around the moon. And we're doing that not just because it's cool. And oh my gosh, it is so cool. We're doing that to learn how to go to Mars. The moon is 2 to 3 days away. So relatively speaking, that's pretty close. If something goes wrong, I can get my astronauts back in 2 to 3 days. If they run out of food, I can get them food in 2 to 3 days, or a part that they need, or whatever, in a couple of days. And that's not bad. Mars is, holy smokes, so much farther away. A trip to Mars when the two planets are at their closest is 7 months. Then once you get to Mars, you have to wait 18 months for the planets to line up again so that it only takes you 7 months to come home again. And there's no shortcutting that. You can't, once you're out there and on your way, you're going. So if something goes wrong on the way, gosh, I hope you figure that out. Good luck, everybody. So there are 5 big things that we have to think about for survivability when we're going into deep space. These might be something good to write down if you're thinking about that. And there's an acronym to help you remember them. The acronym is RIDGE, R-I-D-G-E. The R stands for radiation, which is the most direct threat to human life in deep space, beyond the whole, like, no air and stuff. But even in your vehicle, radiation is a problem. And you can't really keep all of it out. It's a factor that you have to put in there. When we get on the surface, we have to think about things like maybe we'll dig down and have our colony be underground to help protect, or make sure there's water all around it, because water is a great protector for radiation. There's a number of things that you can do, but it's something that you definitely have to think about, and not just for the human life part, but for the computers, for the different equipment, because radiation is a physical thing. It's physical particles that are zooming at the speed of light and bashing into stuff. So it can mess up your computers, it can mess up your body, it messes up all that sort of stuff. But radiation is the kind of first thing you have to think about. Here on Earth, the atmosphere, the magnetic sphere of the planet protect us. Neither Mars nor the moon have that. The moon has no atmosphere. Mars has only 1% of our atmosphere, and neither one have a magnetic field. So radiation is going to get you. You got to be thinking about that, period. The second one, I, is for isolation. This isn't a physical problem. It's a psychological problem. So I always like to think, imagine when you were a younger person and the very first time that you spent the night away from home, and the psychological way that felt. You're at some strange place and things just smell weird and sound weird, and you don't have your whoopee or your special blanket or whatever, and you just freaking want to go home because this is stupid and it was a bad idea. Now, if I'm on my way to Mars, well, too bad, so sad. You just got to deal with it. So we want to be thinking about those things and little things we can do to mitigate that, or to make that less of a problem as we go forward. So in terms of little things that you can do, astronauts, they sleep in a sleeping bag, and the sleeping bag has a pillow that will Velcro to the sleeping bag. Now, you absolutely positively do not need a pillow in space. There's no gravity pulling your head down. But something about having that pillow against your face is a psychological thing that relaxes you and says, oh, it is now bedtime. So anything you can do like that to help you a little bit is something that we definitely want to do. We even, on board the space station, we change the color of the lights throughout the day to trick the brains of the astronaut to thinking that they maybe are still on Earth. So when you wake up in the morning and go through your day, the light is very blue. And that tells a part of your brain that's right here behind your eyeballs. It has a cool name too, by the way. It's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. It just means it's above the optic, it's a whole thing. Anyway, but what it does is it looks for that color, which, by the way, this is why screens are bad at night, because screens tend to have blue light and it tricks your brain into thinking it's daytime. And so you're like, I'm tired, but you shouldn't be. Oh God, I don't know what to do. So Blue light through the day, and then as it goes into evening, the light turns more red. Oh, do I need to pause?
No, you're good.
Don't give me the fake timeout sign, kids.
Sorry. Sorry. Yeah,
Mr. Spice.
that was me. I'm super sorry.
See how you are. Anyway, I was so on a roll. Anyway, now I lost my place. Hold on. What was I saying?
Okay,
Isolation.
talk about the light colors.
As you go through, don't do that to the ADHD guy. Not cool, man. And as you go through the evening, the lights get more red, which tell your brain, okay, now it's time to slow down and time to go to bed. So we cheat that on the space station because they're going around the Earth once every 90 minutes. So they have the sun come up, and then 45 minutes later, the sun's gone. And then 45 minutes later, the sun's back. And they do that 16 times a day. So to help their brains be accustomed to that psychologically, we change the color of the light inside the space station to kind of mimic what they would have here. So all those little things help with isolation. D, the third one, D, is distance. Things are stupidly far away. Because they're so far away, on Mars, for example, to get them a voice message takes an average of 14 minutes. That voice message is traveling via radio waves, which is a speed of light kind of thing, 186,000 miles per second. And even at 186,000 miles per second, it's so far away that it takes an average of 14 minutes to get to Mars. So you got, if they're heading for the cliff and you're like, watch out for the cliff. Yeah, they already are over the cliff before they hear you say that. And now they're going to say bad words at you. And, it's a whole thing. So the distance is a big deal. Anybody want to guess what the G stands for?
Say it.
In space?
Gravity.
Gravity. There you go. Gravity is both a positive and a negative. The positive is you can make things heavier. You can make things taller because gravity isn't affecting it as much. You can carry more stuff. The downside is your body is built to be in gravity. And so your heart is pumping blood to your brain against gravity. Some people more successfully than others. I'm looking at you, Aaron. And in space, all of a sudden you don't need that, but your body doesn't know that at first. So you get the fat head, kind of like me. If I get too close to the thing, it's like you're hanging upside down on the monkey bars and your blood's all rushing to your head kind of thing. But after a couple of days, your body figures that out, stops pushing so hard. But then you get to a place that has gravity, like the moon, like Mars, like Earth. And now your body's like, wait, I have to push again. And the first couple of times you stand up, you pass out. Yay. Also your muscles and bones are built to be in gravity. That's how you get bigger, stronger, faster. In no gravity, your body's crazy efficient and decides it doesn't need to keep throwing materials at your muscles and bones. And so you lose those. You can lose up to 1% of your bone density per month in space. On the space station, they're up there for 5-6 months. So you maybe lose 5-6% at worst. Not horrible, not great. But if we're on a 3-year mission, which by the way, if you go to Mars, it's 3 years. It's 6 to 9 months to get there, 18 months to wait to come back, and 6 to 9 months back, it's 3 years. So 36% of your bone density is a big deal, and we got to figure that out. RIDGE, E is the environment. Space is trying to kill you all the time, like always. No air, crazy temperature shifts, radiation, no pressure, like all of those things are something you have to think about outside of your vehicle now. And then inside your vehicle, as we came through COVID, we realized that people are gross. And if you're stuck in an enclosed space with them, then their cooties are your cooties. And it's just something you have to deal with. So we have to think about the internal environment and the external environment, both of which are trying to kill you all the time. So once we figure all those things out, remember RIDGE, those are the things we have to figure out. Then everything else has to factor into that. So as I'm thinking about what materials to use, as I'm thinking about where to put my thing, all of those things have to come back to those basic survivability issues. So that was a whole lot of me talking at you. I'm hoping maybe we have time, Aaron, for them to ask questions, and the individual teachers maybe in the different rooms can
Yeah.
chime
Yeah,
in
so
with
let's,
that?
yep, so let's do that. For those listening in the other rooms, if you want to just have someone come up to the camera so we can signal, and then you can come off mute and ask, and we'll do the same thing here in our room. Or if you're not comfortable, come up to the camera. If you want to put something in the chat, Steve
Yeah,
and
I'll
I
pull that up.
can read that as well.
Yeah.
And so I would give people some think time to those in front of me. And any of you guys have any questions based on what he shared? Yeah. You want to speak real? Why don't you stand up since you're?
My name is Ivan.
Hey, my name is Ivan. What job do you actually do at NASA?
Me personally, this is actually my job. I am the external relations person. I am the NASA roadshow. I am the NASA evangelist. I go forth and spread the good news. Have bow tie, will travel. I go all over the country and I work with programs like this and amazing human beings like my friend Aaron and your teachers. And I create resources for them to help teach you better and to teach you the things they would teach you anyway, but make it cooler, because anything with NASA is just automatically cooler, obviously. But then I also do engagement stuff like this with students all over the place. And so, you know, there where you are in Iowa and other places, I also work with teachers and students literally all over the world. I just found out I have the opportunity maybe in a couple of months to go to the Arctic and work with indigenous students up there, which I'm pretty freaking excited about.
Do you need a travel partner?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
I know one of the things too. I don't know. I don't see any students up on the cameras yet, but maybe to help paint a visual of how far Mars is. I can't remember the distance, but you have
Okay. Do you want me to
a visual.
do the analogy?
Yeah, can you do the analogy so they can get a sense of how far Mars is?
Yeah. So if you imagine a basketball, in a basketball, it would be about the size of the Earth at the scale we're going to use. That makes the moon about the size of a tennis ball or the size of someone's fist. And those two things would be 25 feet away. So that's a basketball goal, another basketball goal, and half of another basketball goal away from each other. Now, that's far enough in real distance that you can actually put every other planet in the solar system between the Earth and moon, and you would still have about 3,000 to 5,000 miles to spare. At that same scale, Mars is about the size of a cantaloupe. Does you know what a cantaloupe is?
Yeah.
A little orange melon thing. Yeah. That melon would be 4 miles away from where you are. And at that same scale, and I've just recently figured this one out, Aaron. At that same scale, the closest star to us, which is Proxima Centauri, at this scale, that star would still be twice as far away from us as the moon is in real space. So at the scale where the Earth is a basketball and the moon is a tennis ball 25 feet away, the closest star is 430,000 miles away. So things in space are real far. I saw someone's hand up in the back of your room there, and in any of the other satellite classrooms out there, please, guys, ask me how often do you have a NASA guy in front of you?
Yeah, we got one coming up here.
Okay.
We'll get you.
I have a question. Why Mars and the moon? Like, why aren't there any other planets that you guys want to try to land on?
That's a cool question, and the answer is dollar bills, y'all. So NASA, during the Apollo program, NASA was like 30 to 35% of all of government spending. We are now 1/2 of 1%. So if you give $1 in taxes, we get 1/2 of 1 penny of that dollar. So we have to be very specific and very choosy about the things that we do and how we do them. So if you gave me, for example, half of the budget of the Defense Department, I could put you on Mars next week. I mean, it's a little bit of an exaggeration, but not much. So we have to be picky about where we go. And while technically Venus is a little closer to us, and Venus would have the same gravity we do because it's the same size as we are, the same density as we are, there's a lot of things that would be cool about that. Venus is also 900 degrees Fahrenheit on the surface and poses a significant engineering challenge to how we would survive that. Not insurmountable, but it's a lot easier to survive on Mars and costs less. So we are going for the low-hanging fruit first. And we're starting at the moon because it's 2 to 3 days away. We've been there, we have that technology, we've had it for 50 years. So it makes it easy to get there, and a good place for factoring in that we're going to have failures, we're going to have problems, and we want to have those close to home. But that's a wonderful question. And do you guys know what we're going to do after Mars? It's up to you. It's going to be your generation's choice to decide what to do next. So my hope is that you'll decide to fund NASA a lot better. Hint, hint. And we can do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we'll head to the star next.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
Alpha Centauri. Let's go.
Hey, one of the other things too, as we're thinking about the moon, and I'm making sure I'm not stealing any student questions if they are. I think there's a hand up in one room. I don't know if you, in these other classrooms that I'm not face to face in. Oh, there we got a face.
I think Miss Isaacson's got somebody up there.
Yeah, there we go. Let's do that.
Could the DART project used to like protect the moon or Mars?
Yeah, so we are looking at how successful DART was. I mean, as far as success in just being awesome, it wins that already, obviously. I mean, come on. We slammed a thing into an asteroid that was 7 million miles away from us, and finally got vengeance for the dinosaurs. So, but how well it moved, we're still checking into that. But yes, and that's the whole point of that program, is to protect the Earth, the moon, Mars less so until we actually get there, I guess. But yes, that is 100%. That was the whole point of that. Mr. Shepard's class, I see your person has their hand up there.
Okay. What is the highest temperature that Mars has ever reached?
So Mars's average temperature is about negative 139 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah. It gets up to a balmy negative 70 every once in a while. But it's never going to be like, ooh, let's go to the beach today. It's, we're not there yet.
Go ahead.
We got one coming up here. Let's do
See Miss
this
Jacobson's person?
gentleman at Miss Jacobson's class.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to space? And if so, was it like cool or not cool up there?
That's a great question. So I have not been to space. It's hard to tell on video, but I'm the same height as Aaron is. So we're both about 6'4". I think Aaron might be a little taller than me. And they don't typically make spacecraft and spacesuits for normally sized human beings like us. They just make them for little bitty people. So that's one thing. The second, have you guys ever been on a roller coaster?
Yes.
Yeah. So you know that moment when you're coming up the roller coaster, tick, 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 tick. Ah, that moment right there where you're going over and your stomach like goes up in your ears and you just, that's what space feels like all the time. I don't even like the moment of the on the roller coaster, much less 6 months of that or 3 years of that. No, thank you. I would spend my whole time in space trying not to vomit in my space helmet. That's not a good thing. So no. Plus, I'm old. I'm like crazy old. I am 937 years old. One of the benefits of working at NASA is every once in a while they let me get on the spacecraft and go back a little bit, so I get to live a long time. I totally made that last part up. I'm just kidding. Although I am crazy old. And so that's just not something that interests me in doing. But to answer the is it cool part, the answer is absolutely yes. And not only is it cool, it is life-changing. Every person who's been to space, without exception, comes back with a completely changed worldview. Instead of seeing like, oh, well, Iowans are better than Wisconsin people, or Texans are better than everybody. Just ask them. it's, and, the Russians and the Americans and the Brazil, like whatever, they just see us as a whole unit, as a people on a planet together. And it just changes their whole way of thinking about humans and about the environment and about the importance of climate issues and all those sorts of things. So I think honestly, as we go forward and more people have access to space, that's going to be a great thing for really changing the mindset of a lot of the nonsense that we have going on. And I think really, if we sent a lot of our politicians up today and then just, didn't bring them back, maybe, I don't know. Mr. Shepard's class, I see somebody with your hands up there, maybe?
You said that Mars is very cold. Do they have ice caps?
Yes. Yeah, but it's not just water. It's so cold that some of those ice caps are actually frozen carbon dioxide.
Wow.
Yeah. Ms. Jacobson's person.
Okay, go.
What are you most excited for with going to the moon and Mars and stuff like that?
Yeah, so my wife is a photographer, and I've actually gone with her to weddings and stuff where people told me how excited they were that NASA was working again. We've always been working, but people kind of lost sight of that. And so I think that being able to spread that idea of this global community, having us have things that we can work on together, as we go to the moon and we go to Mars, we're not just going as the United States. When we went to the moon last time, it was just the American people against the Russians and blah, blah, blah. This time we're going with other countries, with private partnerships, and India, and all of this stuff really moves that idea of us as a people ahead. And I think we'll save a lot of those problems. Plus, the technology that we develop to do that helps us back here on Earth. So for example, we have to be very thoughtful about how we use water in space, because it's hard to get water and you don't want to take any more than you have to because it's really heavy and all that sort of stuff. So we've developed the ability to recycle water to an incredibly high degree. We can recycle water from the air that you breathe out. We can recycle water that you get rid of in other ways that maybe we won't talk about right now. But all of that is actually being used here on Earth in places that don't have access to good, clean water. We are probably going to be able to find the solution for Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, and other things that are incurable at the moment by studying them in space, because we can create crystal structures and things in orbit that we cannot create here. And all of those things are just going to move us ahead, and that excites me a lot. And Aaron, I think I saw hands up in your room too.
Yep, we got it right there.
Okay.
Is it true that the moon is slowly drifting away, like every year?
Yes, it is, but it's very slowly. It's like a centimeter a year kind of thing. So we've got, a million plus years to really start worrying about it. So I think you're going to be okay, but we'll think about lassoing it and pulling it back in or something at some point. Maybe.
Me? No? Okay. Has since we last traveled to the moon, has anything amazing happened or new?
Oh my gosh. So we last traveled the moon 50 years ago. There's been a couple things happen in the last 50 years. So one of those things would be you happened in the last 50 years, and I think you're pretty amazing. So that's pretty awesome. We have whole new ways of traveling places. We have the internet, we have cell phones, we have laptop computers. I mean, holy croak, so much stuff. Yes, absolutely. And a big thing too is last time we went, remember, it was really us against them. It was Merca get there before them darn Russians kind of thing. And this time we're going together, and that's a huge, huge step in the right direction. That's a brilliant question.
Thanks.
But mostly you. It was mostly you, the cool thing that happened.
Why don't we bounce back to Mrs. Isaacson's room?
Back to the DART project. When you did that, did it actually end up altering the course of the smaller asteroid? And if it did, then how much did it alter the asteroid's course?
Yeah, we're still measuring that. We think that it did, but the exact degree to which it did, we won't know for a little while because we have to watch it move for a little bit longer to see how much different its orbit is than what it was. One of the reasons we chose that is because we can actually see it from here. So we can look with our ground-based telescopes and measure that. So we're going to be measuring it for quite a while. So I don't have an exact number yet, but we think for sure it. I mean, we smacked the snot out of it, so I'm excited about it. And that's a technical term, by the way. Smack the snot out of it.
Do you think you'll launch anything off the moon or Mars later, like when we're really civilized?
Heck to the yes. That's the plan. So moving, that was also a technical term, by the way, heck to the yes. Moving anything off the Earth is a pain in the patootie. So to get those big rockets off, the Saturn V rocket took 11 seconds to go from standing still to getting past the tower that was holding it up. That took 11 seconds. And that was 11 seconds burning 30,000 pounds of fuel per second. So that's the engineering problem, is how you balance having enough fuel to move with the weight of the fuel, and it's a whole thing. So we will launch the vehicle that goes to Mars from orbit around the moon. We are purpose building a platform that's going to be orbiting around the moon to live on and to work on and to do that. We're going to use materials that we pull from asteroids and the moon itself to build that, as using as little as we can from the Earth, because moving stuff is stupid expensive. So that is 100% the plan, because instead of having to have a big rocket that like pushes really hard, I can have a smaller rocket that and get us there.
Hey, one detail too that I think will help, because I know we'll have other opportunities to talk with you as we start to get into our research. As we start to figure out problems to identify, talking about cost, can you enlighten all of us and also remind me again of how much it costs per pound? I want to say it's a crazy dumb number as well, but as we think we can just ship up lumber and machinery, what the cargo costs, because I think that'll help us get to a better idea of research next time we connect with you.
So to get something just a low Earth orbit, now this isn't even the moon, this is just in the low Earth orbit, to get it to the space station, it's $22,000 per kilogram, which in America is $10,000 per pound. So that 16-ounce bottle of water that you take to the space station is a $10,000 bottle of water.
So like this one here, which is 24 ounces, is almost $20,000 to get to the space station.
That is true. Yes.
As a visual reference for.
There you go.
Thank you.
So you're welcome. And there's a disembodied head at the camera. That's really crazy.
Yeah, let me. I'll tilt this down so you can see. All
she
the
was
glory.
tiptoeing, so because before that it was like it was just eyeballs. So
go ahead.
How does the relationships impact how you problem solve? Like the relationships between the people going to space?
Oh, that is such a good question. So the astronauts, before they go on a mission, even to the space station, that crew works together for about a year before they go. And crew selection has some to do with the skills those people have and how those skills work together and complement each other. But the personalities and the relationship between the people is so important. You have to have a good mix of people. You don't want everybody who is kind of that aggressive, wants to be the leader all the time, got to listen to me. If you had 4 people like that, oh my gosh, nothing would ever get done. They would just fight all the time. So you need a good combination of people who are good leaders and people who are good followers, people who are good at different things and have different skills. But those relationships, the personal relationships, are so important that if you're being selected for being an astronaut, the people who have the last say, that get the check and say you can be an astronaut, are other astronauts. And it's based not necessarily off your skills, but the meetings that they have and how much they like you. Because if someone's going to be, I mean, if you've ever been on a road trip with your family where you drove. Yeah, and you're kind of like those people sort of most of the time, but then you're stuck in a car with them and you kind of want to chuck one of them out as you go, and that's your family, right? So, I mean, imagine a 3-year road trip with your family. Exactly. The look on your face right now says it all. 100%. Yes, that's how important relationships are. Perfect.
Awesome. I think there's Mrs. Isaac's class.
I have a question. Does being on the moon or in space like affect your body? Like, do you get taller or shorter?
So much, so much. Right here on Earth, when you go to bed at night, you are shorter than when you wake up in the morning. Just laying flat for the night and getting where gravity's not pulling down on you, you are actually about a centimeter-ish taller in the morning than you were when you went to bed. Now, through the day, you squish back down again. So if you're on the basketball team and want to really show off your stat, like you're super tall, make them measure you first thing in the morning. In space, that's exponentially more because now there's no gravity pulling down on you. And over the course of 6 months in space, astronauts can actually get 2 to 3 inches taller. On the moon, that's not going to be so much because there is gravity, but there's not as much gravity. So I think you would definitely get taller, but maybe not as much as it just space. And the same thing on Mars. It's about 1/3 of the gravity, or yeah, 33%. Yeah, something like that. In Mr. Shepard's class, you've had people that poor person has had their hand up for like ever.
So my question is, how does the James Webb Space Telescope help NASA scientists?
Holy smokes, so much. It helps us so much. It is amazing. So the Hubble Space Telescope showed us some things and was incredible. The James Webb Space, here's a good example. So the Hubble Space Telescope looked at this one piece of sky that looked kind of empty for 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, gave us a really cool picture that showed us a ton of new galaxies and really cool stuff. The James Webb Space Telescope looked at that same spot for 2 hours and gave us an image that was exponentially better and showed us even more galaxies in that same amount of space in 2 hours as compared to 2 weeks of looking at the same place on with Hubble. We've already learned more about the rings of Neptune. We've learned more about even Mars by the better ability. It is 6 times bigger than Hubble. And it's even more than that better at imaging, because think about if I gave you a computer that was made in the 1980s compared to that computer that's sitting in front of you right now, the one in front of you right now is going to be so much better at so many things, right? And it's the same difference in technology. That's a great question. And by the way, and you who are getting ready to ask a question there, your pants look so cool and spacey. I don't even know what to do with that.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay. How do solar flares over time affect our solar system?
Yeah, that's a really good question. One of the problems with Mars is the lack of radiation shielding because of so Mars is smaller than us, but it's even more significantly, it's less dense than we are. So Mars cooled all the way through to the middle, whereas Earth is still melty and hot in the middle. And that melty hotness is moving iron around in the core, which gives us a magnetic field. Mars doesn't have that. So because it doesn't have that, when we have those solar flares, which another way to term that, you might hear it called solar wind, it literally blows the atmosphere off the surface of Mars. So that's why they only have 1%. Now in space, when I'm traveling between Earth and Mars, or if I'm going to the moon, or I'm on the moon, or I'm on Mars, those solar events are tremendous amounts of radiation that are coming through that can really affect the astronauts. It can affect your computers. It can affect all that stuff. And even here on Earth, we have solar flares that are so bad that even with the atmosphere and the magnetic sphere and all that stuff, it still can knock out satellites. It causes like power outages and stuff like that. So it significantly affects us. And we have the Parker Solar Probe, by the way, if you want to research something and look into that a little deeper, that's actually orbiting the sun, helping us understand that better. The cool thing about the Parker Solar Probe is it dips close enough to the sun, it actually goes through the corona or the atmosphere of the sun. And in doing that, it's riding the gravity of the sun and moving at more than 400,000 miles an hour when it goes through there.
Do you have any video footage of the dart hitting the asteroid?
There is a lot of that, yes. And we have some that's coming in from ground-based, which is, and we also have, as it went in, it let satellites out to kind of do some of that. So we'll be releasing more and more of that as time comes, but you can actually just Google it and you can see some of the images that we've already released for that.
Okay.
So Stephen, I want to be respectful of your time, and I know we could probably pepper you with questions here for days, but I know we've got other opportunities to ask. And so we'll make sure that we capture questions here, and those classes I'll follow up and we'll get them organized and set. So make sure their questions can be asked. But I know we've got another session with you coming up on discussion around the 3 different habitats of life in transit, life on the moon, and life on Mars, which we're really excited about. But as we are thinking about getting ready for that, and we start to dive into some research, and by we, everyone involved, what are some things that we should maybe think about considering, or things we should be exploring so that we can be a little prepared or better prepared? Today's a launch, but next time we want to get into those habitats that maybe we can dive into so we can have some deeper conversations.
Sure. So we have learned a ton from the International Space Station, and there's lots of cool research you can pull down about long-term human habitation of space. We've had 3 astronauts that have been in space, 3 American astronauts, I need to be really specific about that, that have spent nearly a year in space in one shot. Scott Kelly, Mark Van de Heye, and Christina Koch, K-O-C-H, I think is how you spell her last name. They were all right at a year in space, and we did a lot of studies with them. The first one of those has a lot of research that's been published because Scott Kelly has a twin brother, Mark Kelly, and they're both astronauts. One of them stayed, the other one went, and they're not just twins, they are identical, genetically identical twins. So that gave us a lot of information. So you can look up the NASA twin study and find out a lot about what happens to the human body long term. And then we have some good resources that I can send you that are educator guides for the teachers involved. One is Habitats with Gateway that we'll talk a lot about and have some cool things about that transit in between kind of thing. And then there's some other ones with, I think, landing safely on the moon is another educator guide that you can pull up that will have more of the lunar side. But we're doing a lot of research on that with analogs as well. So the Hera project and various other ones you can look up, and the word to look up there would be analog. So you're looking up analog habitats for Mars, for the moon. And we're doing that research all the time. That's mostly psychological research. And then there's so much, like we could drown in this. We just grew plants in lunar regolith. Not simulated, but actual soil from the moon, and had some cool results come from that. There's some good podcasts where those people are talking about that. So lots of resources. As you're digging through, if you're not finding anything, you're looking incorrectly. So we're doing a lot of research on that, and we're continuing that research. And really Artemis is part of that research. As we go to the moon and live there, we're researching how to go on. So yeah, lots of cool things, lots of things that we're looking for. And I'll tell you one thing that you might find, and I'll walk you around some of the wording. We have a rover on Mars called Perseverance, and the purpose of that rover, by and large, was to grab samples that would prove that there had been life on Mars. And we found one. In particular, we collected a sample in what was a river delta, and looking at the wording of the findings, the done everything but say they found it. They're holding off being able to say that until they can return that sample back to Earth, which is part of that mission, and can actually verify. But the way they've talked about that, I think it's very likely that they found potentially fossilized bacteria, something in that sample, but they're just not releasing that yet. So those things are all exciting, and those things are all going to really help that as we move forward with all these questions.
Absolutely.
And I'm available,
yeah,
not just for these, but as you guys have questions, give my email out freely.
Yep.
Teachers email me if you have questions going forward about what to find. If you've either run into a rabbit hole and there's too many things and you need help narrowing it down, or you ran into a brick wall and you can't find the next thing, I'm happy to help with both of those.
We appreciate it as always, and I will definitely get all that information out. And yeah, we've got a back channel. I'll get you included on that as well, where all the teachers are hanging out and help with that stuff as well.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for your time. This has been a great kick off to our project and the launch and getting our gears turning. And we got, I think, more questions than answers, which is what it's all about. And we're going to dive in and make some of that stuff happen.
I love it. Hey, can you send me a thing? Give me an idea about how many students we had total today?
Yes, I will.
Just approximately is good.
Yep, gotcha. All right, my friend. Thank you as always.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.